He never thought it would be like this, standing in a silent garage, staring down at a pistol and a blueprint that could make him rich or dead. Jimmy wasn't a criminal, yet. But tonight, that line was about to be crossed. Before you judge him, hit that like and subscribe button, stay tuned, and watch this to the end. Because when cash, code, and betrayal collide, the line between criminal and victim vanishes, and no one walks away clean. The garage smelled like oil and burnt plastic. A single bulb hung above the workbench, swinging slightly from the cracked ceiling fan. Jimmy stood still, staring at the contents of the duffel bag: gloves, a burner phone, a folded map, and a pistol. His heart pounded in rhythm with the hum of the light. The silence was heavier than the gun. He zipped the bag slowly, as if sealing away the final piece of who he used to be. A rusted side door opened with a groan, and Lester walked in. Black hoodie, calloused hands, face unreadable. "You're early," he muttered, not looking up. The keys in his hand jingled against the table. Jimmy didn't speak. He just gave a slight nod, like he was trying to convince himself he belonged here. Lester tossed a folded blueprint onto the table and spread it out. The glossy paper was worn at the edges, smeared with coffee stains and red ink. He pointed at specific marks with a steady finger. "Lobby here. Camera blind spot here. Vault here." Jimmy leaned closer. It looked like a video game map, except this one had real alarms, real guards, and real consequences. Lester slid a tablet across the table. The screen displayed a paused video, the inside of the bank lobby. "That's not live?" Jimmy asked. Lester grunted. "Recorded. Loop ready. 3-day feed spliced. We control what they see, until we don't." Jimmy stared at the screen. It was quiet. Too quiet. Something about the stillness felt fake, even sinister. "This one's soft," Lester said. "You hit the vault. I kill the eyes. 4 minutes, maximum miss the window, we're ghosts or corpses." Jimmy looked up. Lester's eyes were already on him, calculating, cold, and strangely tired. He didn't say it, but Jimmy could feel it. This wasn't Lester's first time. And maybe, not even his first crew. Near the corner of the room was a small pile of masks, cheap black cloth, still in plastic. Jimmy picked one up, turned it over in his hands, and let it fall. "I'm not wearing it." Lester glanced over his shoulder. "Why?" Jimmy shrugged. "No one knows my face. What's the point?" Lester snorted. "They will. One camera, one glitch, one eyewitness. That face becomes public property." Jimmy didn't budge. "I'll take the risk." Lester studied him. "Brave or stupid? We'll find out." He turned back to the blueprint. Jimmy stood a little taller. But somewhere deep inside, doubt was already taking root. The old locker creaked open, revealing metal shelves stacked with hardware. Pistols, ammo, USB drives, SIM cards. Lester pulled out a small pistol and checked the slide. He handed it to Jimmy. Jimmy weighed it in his palm. "Feels light." "It is. You're not here for a shootout. You're here to walk in, walk out, and disappear." Jimmy placed the gun into the duffel. Lester handed him a flash drive labeled SCRMBL. "That's your eyes. Plug it in. Security's gone for 3 minutes, maximum." A car horn beeped outside. The getaway vehicle was already idling, black, unmarked, nondescript. Jimmy zipped the bag shut. Inside was everything he needed: the pistol, the map, the mask he refused to wear, and a USB drive that could blind a building. Lester watched him. "You ready?" Jimmy didn't answer. He walked past him, toward the door. The streetlight cast long shadows across the sidewalk. Jimmy climbed into the passenger seat of the waiting car. The air smelled like cold metal and gasoline. Lester joined him, wordless. As the car rolled away, the city lights blurred in the windows, and with them, the last fragments of Jimmy's old life. He was in now. No turning back. The car slowed to a crawl just 1 block from the target, a corner bank tucked between a pharmacy and a laundromat. Neon signs flickered in nearby windows. It was late, just past 2 a.m., but streetlights cast a pale glare across the sidewalk. Jimmy stared out the windshield. From here, the building looked ordinary, too ordinary. There were no guards out front, no signs of life. But inside? Inside was a ticking vault and a silent alarm waiting to scream. Lester parked in a dark alley behind the building. Clock starts the second you step out. Jimmy nodded. He grabbed the duffel and pushed open the car door. The cold air hit his face like a slap. This was it. Every muscle in his body wanted to hesitate. But he didn't. He walked. Inside the service entrance, the hallway was empty, sterile, silent. Fluorescent lights buzzed above. Jimmy moved quickly. The first camera was near the stairwell. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a mini EMP device Lester had given him. One click. A faint pop. The lens went dark. The next was above the break room. He smashed it with the butt of his pistol. He moved like he was in a trance. One by one, each camera blinked out. No alarms. No red lights. Just darkness. In the main lobby, he ducked behind the reception desk and disabled the last camera near the front entrance. Static filled its feed. The bank was officially blind. But that also meant no more test runs. Everything from here on out was real. The vault corridor was shorter than he expected, just 10 paces from the security door to the vault itself. He found the manager's office, where Lester said the override card would be hidden. Inside, a woman sat hunched behind a desk, eyes wide. The night shift supervisor. Jimmy raised the gun but didn't point it directly at her. Open the drawer. She obeyed without a word. Her hands shook as she pulled out a plastic ID card and slid it across the table. Jimmy took it and gave her a look that said, "Don't. No screams. No begging. Just fear." He moved fast. Down the hallway, the vault door beeped, then clicked. The override worked. As the door swung open, the weight of the air inside hit him. Cold. Dry. Heavy with the smell of iron and ink. Stacks of bills. Metal safety boxes. Security bags. Jimmy's hands moved on their own, grabbing, stuffing, loading. His gloves were slick with sweat. He didn't hear the footsteps behind him until it was too late. Hands. Show me your hands. A voice. Not a cop. One of the bank's private guards, off-duty, in street clothes, holding a small revolver with a shaky grip. Jimmy didn't freeze. He didn't speak. He threw the cash bag toward the man, hard. It hit his chest and threw him off balance. Jimmy fired once, into the wall. Not to kill, just to buy time. The guard ducked. Jimmy grabbed the last stack of bills, bolted out of the vault, and ran. Alarms hadn't triggered, but panic had. Somewhere in the building, someone had hit the silent switch. Red lights began flashing down the hall. Lester's voice crackled through the earpiece. Get out. Now. Jimmy sprinted through the hallway, heart racing, lungs burning. Outside, the alley was no longer empty. Blue lights. Sirens. And Jimmy, gun in hand, cash on his back, adrenaline flooding every nerve, didn't stop. He ran straight into the night. Jimmy burst through the side exit into the alley, gasping for air, clutching the duffel bag tight to his chest. His ears were ringing. His pulse was so loud it muffled the distant sirens. He didn't wait to look around. He ran. Down the alley. Around a dumpster. Across a chain link fence that tore a line through his sleeve. Headlights flared at the corner. He ducked just in time, rolling behind a trash bin as a squad car roared past. Lester's voice crackled in his ear. Intersections hot. Go north. Cut through the parking lot. Jimmy didn't answer. He just moved. Heart pounding. Blood in his throat. Legs screaming. Real quick, if you're enjoying this and want to stay ahead of the curve with AI and cybercrime stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We drop content like this every day. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Each step felt like 1,000 decisions collapsing into one. Survive. As Jimmy sprinted across the lot, a second cruiser skidded into view, tires screeching. Doors flung open. Stop. Hands in the air. Jimmy didn't stop. He raised the pistol and fired, not at them, but at the ground, shattering a glass panel from a nearby bus stop. The sudden blast made the cops flinch. He ducked behind a delivery truck and cut through the alley behind a pawn shop. Bullets pinged off metal somewhere behind him. One struck a pipe inches from his head, spraying steam into the air. Jimmy didn't return fire. He wasn't trying to win. He was trying to disappear. By the time Jimmy reached the edge of the city, his shoes were soaked, and the duffel bag felt like it was filled with bricks. He ditched the pistol in a drainage pipe and climbed a steep, brush-covered hill, his breath ragged, his body screaming. The city lights faded behind him. Ahead, dark ridges, silent trees, and dirt trails leading into nowhere. He stumbled into a dry creek bed and collapsed behind a boulder, chest heaving. Above, a helicopter buzzed past, slow, sweeping searchlights casting long shadows across the terrain. Jimmy lay flat, face in the dirt, eyes locked on the moon. He was alive. But he wasn't safe. Miles away, Lester sat alone in a dark van, fingers flying across a keyboard. For different screens showed security logs, traffic cams, heat maps, and a crypto wallet tracker. One tab displayed a feed from the stolen bank system, spoofed by Lester's software. Another showed a live transfer of digital funds, marked, converted, laundered. As the data moved, so did the trail. Money bounced through 5 countries in under 5 minutes. IP addresses masked. MAC addresses cloned. The getaway wasn't just physical, it was digital. Lester leaned back, cracked his knuckles, and clicked a button labeled Erase Path. All traces vanished. Except one. In a silent corner of the screen, a small alert blinked red. Unusual login detected. Lester didn't tell Jimmy. He just stared at the screen, and smiled. The sun hadn't yet risen when Jimmy slid into the passenger seat of Lester's van, soaked in sweat, his hands still shaking. Lester didn't ask how the run went. He already knew. The duffel hit the floor with a heavy thud. Jimmy leaned back, chest heaving, the heat in the van making his head swim. Lester opened the bag, did a quick count by feel, and zipped it halfway shut. 501. Not bad, he said. Could have been more if you didn't leave the back drawer. Jimmy looked over. You watched. I watched everything. He didn't say it with anger, just authority. Like a man who always knew what came next. From the dashboard console, Lester retrieved a black envelope and slid it over. Jimmy opened it. Stacks of hundreds, clean and crisp. You're cut, Lester said. For now. Later, Jimmy sat at the edge of the garage couch, still gripping the envelope. The money was real, but the silence was heavier. Lester was typing at his workstation, 3 monitors glowing in the dim light. Lines of code flashed past too fast to read. Jimmy cleared his throat. What happens to the rest? Lester didn't look up. It's moved. Cleaned. Laundered. Where? A long pause. Then, somewhere you're not responsible for. Jimmy nodded slowly, but the knot in his stomach twisted tighter. There were other details too, small ones. The van's GPS had been turned off mid-drive. His earpiece had gone silent for a full 30 seconds after the silent alarm. He didn't say any of it out loud, but he was starting to see what this was. Not a partnership. A test. And maybe, a setup. By nightfall, Lester had already picked the next target. City Bank. Uptown. 2 million in loose cash, 3 vaults. 1 locked, 2 timed. He dropped a tablet into Jimmy's lap. The screen showed grainy security footage stitched together from 3 different angles. This one's hotter. More guards. Better alarm system. You'll need this. He opened a drawer and placed a slick, jet black USB on the table, sleek and unmarked. Same system as the last. Jimmy asked. No. This one's newer. Less forgiving. Lester glanced up. You still in? Jimmy looked down at the USB. It didn't feel like a choice. Just a continuation. He nodded. That night, Jimmy stayed behind. He said he wanted to learn the tech. Lester didn't argue. He handed him another device, flat, thin, with a red sensor strip on its side. Plug this into any terminal. Kills cameras. Freezes locks. Gives you 2 minutes. Jimmy turned it over. It looked like nothing. But Lester's expression said it was everything. This isn't just breaking in, Lester added. It's rewriting the script. Jimmy pocketed the drive. His hands weren't shaking anymore. But somewhere in the corner of the garage, a small LED blinked red from an open laptop. Unnoticed. Unmentioned. Tracked. The second target was bigger, brighter, and far less forgiving. A midtown branch tucked inside a commercial plaza, flanked by street cameras, traffic lights, and a 24-hour convenience store with a clerk who never blinked. Jimmy stood near the corner, dressed like any other night shift worker, hood up, hands in pockets, duffel bag slung low. His breath formed clouds in the chilled air. In his earpiece, Lester whispered, "Now." Jimmy moved. He slipped into the alley between the bank and the pharmacy, found the maintenance door, and swiped the cloned keycard. Beep. Click. He was in. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. This time, there were more cameras. Newer. Sharper. Faster. He pulled the ghost device from his coat, plugged it into a nearby terminal, and held his breath. The lights above him flickered. The monitors froze. 2 minutes. He ran. The vault in this bank was older, mechanical, with reinforced locks and steel teeth. Jimmy knelt beside it, slid a second device into the keypad, and waited for the screen to blink green. But it didn't. It blinked red. Once. Twice. Then an override code appeared. One Lester had told him not to use unless he had no choice. Jimmy hesitated. Then used it. The door clicked. Inside, plastic-wrapped stacks, sealed safety boxes, and bags marked Federal Delivery, Do Not Open. Jimmy didn't hesitate this time. He drilled. Fussed. Focused. Every second counted. Behind him, a soft noise. He froze. Someone was in the hallway. He turned quickly, gun raised. It was a janitor. Young. Thin. Frozen in place like he'd walked into a nightmare. They locked eyes for one long moment. No screams. No words. Just fear. Jimmy waved him off with the barrel of the gun. Leave. Now. The janitor nodded, slowly backing out of the hallway. As he turned, Jimmy noticed something. The kid had a phone in his hand. Camera on. Too late to stop it. Too late to delete it. Jimmy returned to the safe, heart pounding. He scooped the last of the cash into his bag and slammed the vault shut. The moment felt heavier than any money he was carrying. By the time he reached the fire exit, the sound of approaching sirens echoed down the block. Lester's voice cut through his earpiece, urgent, clipped. Go east. Alley's clear. Get to the bike. Jimmy bolted down the side alley, leapt over a stack of crates, and spotted the motorcycle chained beside a dumpster. He unlocked it with shaking hands, kicked it into gear, and roared into the street, just as the first patrol car turned the corner behind him. He weaved through traffic, past red lights, down stairwells, and under overpasses. His body was moving faster than his mind. But one thought cut through everything. That janitor saw his face. And someone, somewhere, was watching this unfold in real time. Jimmy returned to the hideout long after midnight. He didn't speak. Neither did Lester. The room was dim. A cold pizza box sat unopened on the desk. One monitor showed looping street cam footage from an hour ago. The others were blank. Lester sat still, eyes on a code window full of firewall data and encrypted transfers. But his fingers weren't moving. Jimmy leaned against the wall, trying to catch his breath. The cash from the second hit, almost $2 million, was still in the duffel bag on the floor. What now? He finally asked. Lester didn't look away from the screen. Already moved it, he said. Jimmy stiffened. What? The cash. Laundered. You'll see your share in crypto within the week. Cold wallet. Temporary keys. Jimmy blinked. You didn't even count it. Lester shrugged. Didn't need to. There was no proof of how much had been taken. No split. No record. Jimmy realized the only numbers he could trust were the ones Lester let him see. And that terrified him more than the cops ever did. Later that night, Jimmy sat alone in Lester's van, scrolling through the bank's news coverage on his burner phone. They had already aired a blurred freeze frame from the janitor's video. It was grainy, but clear enough. The hoodie. The jawline. The bag. It was him. He glanced toward the front seat. Lester's tablet was locked. His laptop password protected. Jimmy tried to shake the paranoia. But it wasn't going away. The strange silences. The redirection of funds. The fact that Lester never entered the banks himself. Jimmy was just the front line. The tool. And the moment he stopped being useful, he'd be the fall guy. He powered down the phone and stared out the windshield. Was this still a partnership? Or a trap? 3 states away, inside a sterile government office lit by humming fluorescent lights, Agent Collins leaned over tech desk. A young analyst pointed to a screen. "We found something," she said. On it was a series of crypto wallet addresses, recently active, routed through obfuscation layers and foreign mixers. But one transfer, just one, had leaked a partial signature. A timestamp. A location ping. Not enough for an arrest. But enough for a trail. Collins nodded. "Flag it. Set up surveillance on any endpoint activity. Let's start pulling license plates near that ping." The FBI wasn't blind anymore. They were watching. And they were patient. Back in the hideout, Jimmy returned from a brief supply run and found the garage unusually quiet. Lester was gone. His desk was wiped clean. Only one monitor was on, displaying a black screen with a blinking cursor. Next job soon. Be ready. No location. No time. No name. Just a message. Jimmy looked around the room. One of the cameras was missing from the corner shelf. The cash bag was gone. So was the backup drive. Something had changed. And for the first time since this all started, Jimmy didn't know what came next. A dim room glowed with screens. In Washington, Agent Collins watched real-time data flood the FBI's CyberOps division. Wallet addresses. Transaction patterns. GPS metadata. "Here," said a junior analyst, pointing to a map. "Same pattern. New node. Same digital fingerprint. They're prepping something. Big." Collins didn't blink. "They're arrogant now. That's our advantage." He pointed to a red dot on the screen. "Find everyone who rented a van in that radius. Flag any burner phones that ping off that cell tower. We don't need to catch them in the vault. We'll catch them at the keyboard." The dragnet was set. And the net was tightening. Jimmy hadn't slept in 2 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the janitor's face. The phone camera. The blinking cursor on Lester's screen. He kept checking the crypto wallet Lester assigned him. Still empty. No funds.
No confirmation.
No proof the money was real. He walked the perimeter of the hideout 3 times that night, flashlight in one hand, pistol in the other. Before we continue, if stories like this fascinate you and you want to stay updated on how AI is shaping the dark web, scams, and the future of cybercrime, go ahead and hit subscribe. Let's keep you informed and ahead of the threats. He disconnected the van's GPS manually, removed the batteries from the burners, smashed the Wi-Fi router. He wasn't sure if Lester was protecting him, or prepping him for sacrifice. And when the fear finally got too loud to ignore, Jimmy made a decision. He was done following blindly. If Lester wanted to run one more job, he'd play by his own rules this time. The message came 2 nights later. A USB drive in a sealed envelope, slipped under the garage door. No note. Just a label. The Widow. Jimmy plugged it into a safe laptop. A video loaded. A high-security facility, converted from an old federal courthouse. Inside, an armored cash vault used for federal seizure assets. The payout? Estimated at over $6 million. Jimmy stared at the screen, numb. This wasn't just another bank. This was federal property. He exhaled slowly. "You're insane," he whispered. But part of him was tempted. It wasn't the money anymore. It was the need to know how far Lester would go, and who was really pulling the strings. At FBI CyberOps, Agent Collins watched the network traffic shift. "There," the analyst said. That video was pulled from a secured law enforcement archive. Only a handful of people had access. Run all VPN traffic and encrypted channels that downloaded that footage. Prioritize TOR exits with outbound fingerprints. Get a team on that drop site. Now." Collins stood. "This isn't just a robbery," he said. "It's a war game." Jimmy crouched behind a stone column outside the courthouse-turned-federal depository. Midnight. Downtown was dead quiet, but his instincts were screaming. This place was wrong. Too quiet. Too easy.
No patrols.
No lights in the upper windows. No movement from the rooftop. Just the vault entrance, waiting like a mouth ready to swallow him whole. He inhaled sharply and slipped inside through the service hatch Lester had promised would be unlocked. It was. But it wasn't empty. The moment he stepped inside, the lights snapped on. Blinding. Cold. Controlled. A dozen red laser dots crawled across his chest. "Down. Hands where we can see." The voice came from everywhere.
No hecho.
No time. He froze. Hands slowly rising. Eyes darting. And that's when he saw him. Lester. Standing in the observation deck above, arms crossed. Expression blank.
No headset. No laptop.
Just silence. Jimmy's blood turned to ice. It had all been a diversion. 2 hours earlier, Agent Collins had been briefed inside a mobile command unit parked a block away. They had traced the source of the final job upload, the USB with the widow, to a remote server that self-destructed the second Jimmy opened the video. A trap. Set by Lester. Designed to draw Jimmy out. Collins wasn't interested in Jimmy. He wanted the one who built the digital web. But when the FBI raided the garage hideout, Lester was already gone. Drives wiped. Cameras burned. Walls scrubbed clean. The only thing left behind? A photo of Jimmy from his first job, pinned to a corkboard with a bullet casing. Weeks later, a federal forensic team reconstructed the chain. They mapped out every stolen coin, every phantom wallet, every VPN reroute. And in the middle of it all, one consistent signature. LX_13, Lester's Ghost ID. He had orchestrated 6 heists in 3 states using different runners, different faces, different names. Jimmy had just been the final one. The one used to burn the evidence trail. The one meant to go down in flames while Lester vanished into the fog of crypto and shadows. The only reason it failed? Jimmy survived. Handcuffed to a bench in a federal holding room, Jimmy didn't speak. Not to the agents. Not to the lawyers. Not even to himself. He didn't beg. He didn't deny. When they showed him the footage from the janitor's phone, he didn't flinch. When they listed the charges, armed robbery, conspiracy, wire fraud, federal property invasion, he didn't blink. They offered him a deal. Turn on Lester. Give them names. Cut the sentence. But Jimmy had none. Because Lester didn't exist. At least, not in any form the government could pin down. He was a signal. A script. A virus in human skin. And Jimmy? He was just the latest system Lester had exploited. The courtroom was packed. Press lined the back wall, cameras pointed at Jimmy as if he were a celebrity, or a monster. Federal agents filled the front rows. On the prosecution bench, Agent Collins sat stoically, his case airtight. Jimmy entered in an orange jumpsuit, wrists cuffed, jaw tight. He walked like a man carrying something heavy, his guilt, maybe, or his rage. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and a face carved by decades of hard choices, gave him one long look. "This is a federal courtroom," she said. "Not a movie. Not a video game. You don't get do-overs here, Mr. Cole." Jimmy said nothing. He didn't look at the crowd. Not even when they read the indictment. 32 counts, including cyber-assisted robbery, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit federal crimes. He didn't flinch. He just stared ahead. The prosecution brought in their star witness, a digital forensics expert from the FBI. She explained how the team had reconstructed the entire sequence of events using transaction logs, IP drift patterns, and forensic metadata left behind by Lester's custom scripts. Slide after slide appeared on the screen behind her: maps, dates, banking systems, surveillance timestamps. Everything pointed to a brilliant, coordinated network of heists. Everything except a name. The code's authorship had been scrubbed clean.
No fingerprints.
No voice recordings. No metadata trail. Jimmy's name, however, was everywhere else. Vault footage, car rentals, burner phone transactions, GPS pings. He was the ghost they could catch. Lester was the one they couldn't even prove existed. Outside, the media had turned the case into a spectacle. Crypto bandit brought to justice. Federal heist mastermind or puppet. Jimmy Cole, hacker, robber, or victim. News channels looped images of the robberies, clips of Jimmy's arrest, dramatic recreations of the escapes. The janitor's blurry phone footage went viral, his frightened voice dubbed over with ominous music. Commentators debated whether Jimmy was a criminal genius or a kid manipulated by forces he couldn't understand. Public opinion fractured. But the court didn't care about opinions. It cared about evidence. And the evidence painted a clear picture. The jury took 5 hours. Jimmy didn't rise when they returned. Guilty, the foreman said. On all counts. The judge's tone was firm, without cruelty. You had chances. You made choices. And you caused real harm, not just to institutions, but to people. To workers. To families. To trust. She paused, as if deciding whether to give him one last chance. Then she handed down the sentence. 17 years in federal prison. No parole for the first 12. As the gavel fell, Jimmy closed his eyes. It wasn't relief. It wasn't regret. It was something colder. Acceptance. The system had finally caught him. But not the one who wrote the code. Months after the verdict, Jimmy's story still circulated like static in the digital airwaves. Cable news ran special segments titled "The Code Behind the Heist." Documentaries recreated the robberies in slow motion, casting Jimmy as both villain and victim. Online forums spun conspiracy theories, some claiming Jimmy was just the fall guy for a larger criminal syndicate, others insisting he was Lester, playing both roles for power and profit. None of it changed reality. His name was in the system now. Stamped in legal records. Etched into headlines. And no amount of crypto laundering or server wiping could scrub that clean. Despite months of digital tracing, Lester was never found. Interpol flagged 3 accounts tied to his known signature, LX_13, all drained and deactivated within minutes of the final heist. 1 server in Singapore. 1 in Bucharest. 1 somewhere in Alaska. All gone. No name.
No fingerprint. No camera footage.
The FBI called him non-existent. But Collins didn't buy it. In his private notes, the agent kept a single printed frame, surveillance still from 6 months before Jimmy's first hit. A man in a hoodie, blurry face turned away, standing outside a bank Jimmy would later rob. Lester. Maybe. But that's the thing about digital ghosts. They only leave footprints if they want to be followed. The aftermath triggered change. Federal banks rolled out new multi-layer encryption firewalls. ATM networks were segmented and restructured. Live surveillance feeds were now mirrored off-site in real time. Tech companies partnered with law enforcement to develop AI-assisted anomaly detection, scanning for transaction patterns that echoed the ones Lester used to hide millions. Some called it progress. Others called it too late. Because for every wall built, someone was already learning how to climb it. And Lester, he had already written the next blueprint. Jimmy now spends his days behind bars. Sometimes, he speaks with interns from the FBI's cyber division, teaching them how the system failed, what to look for, and what to never ignore. He doesn't ask for a deal. He doesn't apologize. But sometimes, late at night, he stares at the concrete wall of his cell and remembers Lester's voice. Not what he said, but how he said it. Calm. Detached. Like the whole thing was just a simulation. And maybe it was. Because in a world run by systems, the scariest villain isn't the one with a gun. It's the one who writes the rules. If this story left you thinking, hit that like button. Subscribe for more true crime stories where code meets crime, and every detail matters. Because the next criminal mastermind might not kick in a door, they'll just type the right line of code. And remember, every click leaves a trace. Stay alert. Stay safe. Stay subscribed.